Good morning, everyone. My name is Shaker Krishnan. I'm a Democrat running for City Council here in Jackson Heights in Elmhurst, Queens. Today, we are here standing, all of us, as neighbors, as residents, as professors, as undergrad, graduate students, as immigrants, children of immigrants, parents, to call for a free and fully funded Cuny. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Woo! Our public education is the heart of our education in New York City. And our Cuny system is the heart of our higher public education in New York. Cuny is a system where over 60% of the families make under $30,000 a year in income, where the student body is over 80% people of color. It is also a system where more than half of its students work at least part-time. It is critical that our city government support and center Cuny in its higher education. It is critical that the resources for Cuny reflect the incredible promise and diversity of the student body that goes through its doors, that then sustain our city going forward afterwards. That's why today I'm so proud to stand with so many of my neighbors to call for our 5-point plan when it comes to fighting for Cuny in our city. Point 1, we need to make Cuny free again. Higher education in our country, in our city, must be free. And it should not saddle students, especially low-income students of color, with immense debt that they spend the rest of their lives paying off. Cuny was actually, the history of Cuny was actually as a free tuition institution. And that's only changed over the years. It is time to return Cuny to its roots. It is time to return Cuny to its history and make Cuny free again immediately. Point 2, we have to make sure that our private universities are paying their fair share of taxes to city government, which then goes back in funding to Cuny. Right now, private institutions like Columbia University, for example, get full tax exemption when it comes to their institutions. But what we need is them to make payments, not tax exemptions, payments to the city called pilots, or payments in lieu of taxes, funding that would go straight from the city government back to fund Cuny and education at Cuny. We need pilots for Cuny to start right away. 3, our community colleges of our Cuny system are the heart of Cuny and the heart of what receives the most in city funding right here in New York. Our city must invest far more in the community colleges of our Cuny system. And right now, our city budget, we shouldn't be talking about cuts to Cuny. We should be talking about increasing at the city level, especially funding and resources for Cuny and especially for our community colleges. Point 4, we have to make sure the faculty of Cuny reflect the incredible diversity of our student body, which in turn reflects the incredible diversity of our New York City, of our immigrant communities that drive this city forward every day, before, during, and after this pandemic. And finally, Cuny needs to increase its pay for our adjunct faculty. It's relied instead on hiring more permanent faculty, on adjunct faculty that they aren't paying a living wage that they should be paying. It's time for Cuny as an institution to step up and pay its adjunct faculty far, far more. Our Cuny system of higher public education is the heart of our city and our city's education system. It is time for New York to treat it that way. It is time for our city government to invest in Cuny the way it should always have, by centering working class communities of color who make up the overwhelming majority of these institutions of Cuny. Brevemente en español, mi nombre es Shaker Krishnan. Yo soy demócrata y estoy postulándome para el Consejo Municipal de Jackson Heights y Elmhurst. Estamos aquí porque nuestro sistema de educación pública en colegio con Cuny es el corazón de nuestro sistema de educación en esta ciudad. Las comunidades de color, las comunidades de inmigrantes, familias trabajadoras, están en la población de Cuny. Así que ahora es la hora que la ciudad, el gobierno de la ciudad refleje en sus inversiones, en sus recursos para Cuny, los estudiantes que son la población de esta institución tan especial para nuestra ciudad. Cuny, las raíces de Cuny son de una institución gratis de educación. Y ahora es la hora que Cuny vuelva a una institución gratis, una institución pública y gratis. Es la hora que esta institución de Cuny regrese a sus raíces para la población de estudiantes que son parte de esta institución. Es la hora en nuestro plan de 5 puntos. El segundo punto es que la ciudad tiene que requerir que las universidades privadas den fondos, como se llama pilots, a la ciudad para que la ciudad los invierta en Cuny, porque Cuny necesita esos recursos. Es la hora que la ciudad invierta en los colegios de comunidades de Cuny también. Y es la hora que la facultad de Cuny refleje los estudiantes en cultura, en raíces, en diversidad. Finalmente, el 5 punto, los adjuncts de Cuny merecen un pago, un salario digno. Y Cuny tiene que aumentar el salario para los adjunct profesores. Eso es por qué estamos aquí, porque es el tiempo para proteger, para apoyar nuestro sistema de educación pública de Cuny. Muchísimas gracias. Now, we have some speakers. Thank you all so much. Now, we have with us today 2 speakers to emphasize these points and speak from their personal experience. Speaking to us today, both in English and Spanish, is Enrique Peña. Enrique is a dreamer. He's an undergrad and graduate student at Queens College, studying both ethnic studies and Latin American studies. And he's here to speak today about why a free and fully funded Cuny is so important and what our student body wants to see from Cuny. Come on up, Enrique. Yeah.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, I can take my mask off,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
All right. Hello, everyone. Okay, so my name is Enrique Peña Oropesa. I'm a dreamer, and I'm a proud New Yorker, just like everyone else here. One of the things that I wanted to say before I speak as a student, I speak as a dreamer, and I wanted to thank Shaker for being such an incredible part of our community, supporting us from day one, and I'm so glad that I have the hope to see him in City Council soon. I'm a Cuny student. I'm a triple major in political science, urban studies, Latin American studies, and also doing an accelerated master's in urban affairs in Queens College. And I'm here because Cuny is my American dream. As a student advocate, I have spent so much time going to protest, to hearings, to so many different types of events, to try to push our authorities to talk more about Cuny and to put a priority on our higher education. Because of a phrase of the Peruvian poet Cesar Vallejo, to know more is to be more free. A quality education for communities of color can be a ticket out of poverty, or the school to prison pipeline. We buy our freedom through education. Now that we have spent over a year in the pandemic with online classes and students are bound to return to campuses, I cannot forget the words of every politician during this past year, telling us that we need to rebuild this city. What is the best way to do that? By funding education. Shaker has already spoken last week about the dire need of our schools to be fully funded and integrated so our students have access to a quality education, no matter their background, their family income, or the color of their skin. We are in a crisis only compared to the Great Depression. And let me remind you that the greatest expansion of Cuny was during that time. The government understood back then that their job was not to return to the old days, but to move forward and create a better normal. Education is not it's not a spending, it's an investment. and a better funding in Cuny will mean more New Yorkers will have access to better jobs and a possibility for upward mobility. But what is the way to do it? It's time to better pay our faculty and staff living in poverty wages. It is time to fix our infrastructure, to create real accessible campuses for our students with disabilities so they can feel as welcome as everyone else, because they should be. It is time to increase funding for ethnic studies programs like Asian studies, Latin American studies, Africana studies, so students are allowed and encouraged to learn their own history. It is time to fund mental health services and food pantries for our most vulnerable students. And last but not least, it is time to make Cuny free once and for all. Now, say it in Spanish. Bueno, buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Enrique Peña Oropesa. Soy un dreamer y soy un neoyorquino con orgullo, como cualquier persona acá. Estoy concentrándome en tres carreras en este momento, que es Ciencias Políticas, Estudios Urbanos y Estudios Latinoamericanos, a la vez de hacer un máster en Estudios Urbanos también en Queens College. Y hoy día me paro frente a ustedes porque Cuny es mi sueño americano. Como un activista estudiante, he pasado muchísimo tiempo yendo a eventos, a protestas, a demostraciones, para poder presionar a nuestras autoridades a que pongan un poco más de fondos a nuestras universidades públicas, porque entiendo las palabras del poeta peruano César Vallejo: saber más es ser más libre. Para las comunidades de color, una educación de calidad significa un ticket para salir de la pobreza o para salir de esa presión que existe para que los estudiantes de color terminen en cárceles. Nosotros compramos nuestra libertad gracias a la educación. Y ahora que hemos pasado más de un año en esta pandemia, con clases online y los estudiantes van a retornar pronto a las clases presenciales, no podemos olvidarnos las palabras de todos los políticos que dicen que es momento de reconstruir esta ciudad. ¿Y cuál es la mejor forma de reconstruirla? Pagando una mejor educación. Shaker ya habló la semana pasada acerca de la necesidad que tenemos de poder darle mayor fondo a las escuelas públicas para poder integrarlas nuevamente, para que todos los estudiantes, sin importar su color, su nacionalidad, el dinero que tengan un acceso a una educación de calidad. Y bueno, hoy estamos en una crisis que solo se compara con la Gran Depresión. Y tenemos que recordar que la mayor expansión que ha tenido nuestras universidades públicas ha sido durante esa época, porque los políticos entendieron en ese momento que la mejor forma de reconstruir nuestra ciudad era apoyando esa educación, que no teníamos que volver a los viejos tiempos, pero teníamos que crear un nuevo normal que sirva para todos, un mejor normal. Una educación pública va a darle mayor acceso a mayor cantidad de neoyorquinos para que puedan salir de la pobreza, para que tengan mejor movilidad social. Pero ¿cuál es la manera de hacerlo? Tenemos que pagar a nuestros profesores para que no sigan viviendo de sueldos miserables. Tenemos que reparar nuestra infraestructura para que estudiantes con disabilidades tengan acceso a nuestros campuses y se sientan bienvenidos como todos deberían de sentirse. Tenemos que aumentar el presupuesto para nuestras clases de estudios técnicos para que los estudiantes se sientan, tengan la oportunidad de aprender su propia historia. Tenemos que apoyar servicios de salud mental, tenemos que apoyar food pantries, tenemos que hacer que nuestra universidad sea gratuita una vez y para siempre. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Enrique. Thank you so much. If you believe that our students of color shouldn't have to live in poverty, shouldn't have to face eviction or homelessness, that they should be able to make a dignified wage without, after all of those struggles, being saddled with immense debt, then it is time for the city to invest in Cuny, to make it free again, and put in the city resources that have long been overdue. Enrique captured it so powerfully, telling his story, and I'm so glad that he spoke. But that's not only the words of the students, that's also the words of the faculty of Cuny too. And that's why I'm so proud to introduce a faculty member of Cuny, an expert in Peruvian history, and also a member of PSC Cuny, the union for its staff and faculty too, and a neighbor and a good friend, Mark Rice. Come on up and say a few words, Mark. Woo! Yay!
Well, I'll start with an apology because those are two tough speakers to follow. So I apologize if I repeat some talking points and if I repeat them more poorly y por no presentar en español. I'm very proud to be teaching in Cuny since 2014, and the predecessor of Cuny was founded by Townsend Harris in 1847, who said that he wanted to, quote, open the doors to all. And in many ways, we need to return to that vision. And so I would like to point out 3 reasons why we should return to a tuition-free Cuny, which was what Cuny was like from its founding in 1847 to 1976. So this is not some sort of thing that is a pipe dream. It was reality for most of Cuny's history. So I want to give 3 reasons why we can return to that, and also point to other reasons why Cuny should be fully funded to match that commitment. One is an economical reason. So much of New York's 20th century success is thanks to the free education it provided its citizens. So many of its working class citizens who were often excluded from elite private schools due to their class, their race, their religion, were able to get a free and great education and use that to build New York City's economy in the 20th century, and did so incredibly successfully. And even today, a recent Brookings Institution study found that of the top 10 colleges linked to social mobility, 6 of those top 10 were Cuny colleges. It's worth noting as well that Cuny propels more people into the middle class, actually 6 times more people into the middle class than all of the Ivy Leagues, Duke, MIT, Stanford, Chicago combined. And so just think of how much more we can get out of Cuny if we're not doing this job with one hand tied behind our backs. And just think of the amount of investment and return that we can get from our citizens that can contribute to the city without having to carry the burden of debt going into college. A second reason is a practical reason. A recent study shows that roughly 66% of Cuny students already are receiving some form of tuition break or financial aid. But in order to do that, they have to jump through lots of hoops, bureaucratic hoops that are often really tough for students who don't have English as their first language, or are first-generation scholars. And also, these are hoops that have a lot of requirements for maintaining credits and maintaining a certain amount of credit hours, stuff that's really difficult to do during a pandemic, right, when you have to care for family members and fill in essential work. Which brings to the third point, and as I said, it's the right thing to do. As was earlier noted, during the Great Depression, the city actually invested in Cuny. It expanded Brooklyn College and Queens College because it recognized that it was the right thing to do for its own citizens, right? To give them an access to opportunity to make their future and the future of this city. But in order to achieve this vision, we also need, as we're calling for, better and full funding of Cuny, because free tuition is great, but it doesn't help if you're going to college at a college that doesn't have the proper instructors and facilities and resources to provide that education. So it's really great to see this campaign to push for hiring of more full-time faculty. The best numbers I have from fall of 2017 is that Cuny relied on adjunct faculty, part-time faculty. There's 12,000 adjuncts for teaching in Cuny compared to only 7,500 full-time faculty. And these adjunct instructors do wonderful work, but unfortunately they're often constrained by the fact that they have low salaries, low job security, they don't have as many resources for research. So we need to increase their salaries, increase full-time hiring of faculty so we can take adjuncts and hire them as full-time faculty. Which makes for better instructors, and it also makes for a more diverse Cuny, because these new, younger faculty that are coming in are going to be from a more diverse pool of scholars. I mean, you want to make Cuny more diverse, you've got to hire people to do that. And it's not just an expanding funding for faculty hiring, maintenance of effort, so the lights stay on, the buildings are in good shape, our labs are in good shape, our libraries have resources, and also support for the staff. right now, CUNY can only provide one mental health advisor per 2,500 students. I mean, think about that, the students that need help and counseling coming out of the crisis of COVID, right? So this kind of leads me to my conclusion of why it's so important and refreshing to see new politicians, new people running for office that bring forward a vision that's going to restore CUNY to what it once was and make it a new promise for a new century in rebuilding the city. And this is critical because right now we're still kind of going in the wrong direction. The current city budget has proposed cutting $77 million to community colleges. Over 2,000 adjuncts were laid off or not rehired during the pandemic and have still not been rehired, meaning there's higher class sizes. We're going in reverse. So it's great to see people rallying to restore CUNY, make it a better university system, to make it what it really can be. So as I said, let's open the doors to all and give CUNY the resources to do so. It makes economic sense, it makes educational sense, and most importantly, it's the right and fair thing to do. Thank you.
Woo! Thank you so much, Mark, for what you said so powerfully. And also, Professor Rice coming through with the statistics too. They were also really powerful. Very professorial, I liked it. Well, thank you both so much. And standing with us today, too, are students who are the future of our city as well, who are in CUNY right now, too. Nusrat Hossain, from here in Elmhurst, who's about to start at CUNY in Health Sciences at LaGuardia College for her graduate studies. Sammy here, the son of a small business owner, who's studying political science right now at Queens College. These are the future. These students are the future of our city. Viviana, Enrique, Nusrat, Sammy, and soon enough Sally too. Woo! That's right. And our city needs to be investing in them and their future in the way that them and their families too have helped push this city forward through its most difficult times as well. This is what we mean when we talk about making sure CUNY is free again. This is what it means when we say to fully fund CUNY. This is what it means when we say New York City and New York State must finally invest in a new deal for CUNY, must finally invest in our public higher education in the way it always should have. Because it is investing in the future of our working class communities who sustain this city every single day. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming out today too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thanks so much. All right. June 22nd. Thank you so much, guys. That was awesome.
Yo, that was real speed.
Yeah,
I'm ready to start CUNY. Always start CUNY. Be like, free going!